It's the Eagle Community Television Forum with your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi everyone, I'm Gary Shorman, and this is the Forum on Eagle Community Television. I'd like to say this is a special edition of our forum because we have one of the hardest working state representatives sitting right next to me here, and that is our state representative, Sue Boldra. And Sue, good to have you on our program.
Thank you.
I know it's the off season for legislative work, but you work endlessly, not only on the state, but you have a real job as well.
Yes, I do.
Tell us what's happened since the end of the term.
Well, as you know, I teach at Fort Hays State University, so I taught a full summer schedule and I'm teaching again in the fall, and then I'll take a leave of absence in the spring. But yes, I've had a number of constituent concerns that we've tried to clear up. All the Special Education Committee, trying to figure out how we're going to fund and what kind of new formula we're going to come up with. I've been all over Western Kansas to attend economic development issues, education meetings. I've had a good time. I've met a lot of people. I'm also the vice chair of AG, the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee, and we had two really nice ag tours across parts of Kansas.
How do you manage this, Sue? Because you have the teaching job that you have family. How do you keep all of it going, or do you drag the family along and say, here we go?
Well, as you know, my family has grown with, we have 9 grandchildren now, and so I sometimes drag Carl around, but he usually would rather stay. And so I do a lot of traveling up and down the interstate.
Well, it's good because you're out there seeing people. And what do you hear? I mean, if you look at it, it's one thing to say, shake hands, say yeah, all this, and go with a parade and wave. But when the parades are over, the special events are over, what do people come up and say? Sue?
Sue, what are we going to do with our state? How are we going to fund education and the IDD population and take care of the children, all those things? We really have some concerns, and people are concerned about the financial state of Kansas right now. Most Kansans are here because we love to be here, we love our state, and usually we trust the people who run our state, but I think there's some concerns right now.
Well, you hear headlines are always popping up, or you hear them saying, boy, the state is missing, I think, over $150 million of revenue. And for those of us that have budgets at home, you say, okay, if you're missing a big chunk over here, how do you make up the rest of that? And so how do you answer those questions?
Well, as you know, the latest estimates came in again. The estimates were much higher than the actual monies that were received. That's right. We're now down $159 million for the year. And so again, the governor went through some allotments and took some more money from KDOT and moved some money around. We'll be okay until we get back to the session, and then we're really going to have to struggle with this and figure out some real solutions to this problem.
Well, one of the concerns is this has been going on for the last couple of years, where money's been coming from here and we take it and we move money around, and at some point that catches up with us. For those of us that, again, run our own family business, we don't run it that way.
That's right, and I think we're at that point. You know, if you remember in 2012, they came up with a very draconian glide to zero income tax idea, and it was even more at that time than the governor had wanted. He thought it was a little too much too soon, but he went with it, and now he seems to be supporting it at every turn and doesn't want us to fix it or to mess with it. However, many of you know that we tried to pass a bill last year that would put in some of that LLC money that have been exempt from taxes, from income taxes, put that back in at the lowest rate. It'd only be 2.4%. And we really feel that doing that for the LLCs and the S Corps and other people who didn't have to pay taxes, who have been exempted for the last 4 years, that if we put that in, it really would make up the money. The money is down, obviously, because of oil and gas.
I think agriculture is down a little too.
And agriculture, the commodities markets are way down for what we produce out here. We haven't had the sales taxes that we had assumed, even though we raised that sales tax money. It didn't come in. You asked me about those, what were you asking
about?
Block
grants?
No, the money that they weren't going to have to pay fees and penalties if they came back with their late taxes.
Oh, the tax amnesty program.
That's right. But again, the last time that was done, again, before I was in the legislature, but it brought in about $30 million. And so their hope was that if they pass that again and give people a break, if they pay their taxes sometime between August and October, I think were the dates, they wouldn't have to pay back taxes or penalties. And we don't have a number yet, but what I'm hearing is that those aren't coming in near the $30 million mark. It was just too soon to give that amnesty again.
Well, Sue, I know there's ways that you can move money from different places and move them around and do all of this, but end of the day, something's going to have to happen.
That's right.
What can one state representative from Western Kansas that's out knocking on doors as hard as anyone, what can you do to help that situation? Because in the end of the day, it hurts our schools.
Sure.
Obviously, it hurts the services that we can offer, social services and other things as well. But how do you make a difference in your job?
That is my question. For me, all this summer, all this fall, we really need to get that LLC put back in the income tax. We voted on it last year, and we could only get up to 47. We need 63 votes in the House to get anything done. We got up to 47, and then people who realized that it wasn't going to pass started changing their vote back to no, so that they wouldn't go on record as having voted for a tax increase. This is going to be an election year. Legislators are going to be concerned about how their constituents are going to see it if they vote to raise taxes, and they don't want that. However, we're going to have to do that.
To balance the books.
Just to balance the books. And the education lawsuit has now gone through the Supreme Court. They're going to give us some sort of a decision sometime, probably the end of the year or the first weeks of January. And so we're going to have money for that. They're talking about another $54 million perhaps that will be put into the schools. We have to come up with a funding source, and it can't just be moving money around.
Now, initially, the plan was that you lower income taxes, dollars come into Kansas, the revenues jump up. The opposite has happened. So at some point, we're going to have to figure out a plan for that. And the session next year sounds like it's going to be, that this last one wasn't a lot of fun, but it's going to be interesting from your side. What do you hear about the education side of this? Because when you're out in industry, that's what you hear about, the cuts mainly in education, both in K through 12 and also in secondary education as well. Where does that stand in I say your district, but your part of the state?
Well,
our part of the state.
As you know, we got rid of the funding formula, and we've gone to a block grant for 2 years. During that time, we're just paying the schools basically what they received the year before. We're going to do this for 2 years, and so even if they have a growing population or a needier population, they're not going to get any money unless they can go through the emergency funds. So we are working on a finance formula. I am on the special education committee that's meeting this summer, the interim committee. And there are a few plans out there. And what I would like to see is whatever we decide to do, that we put it over the 6 innovative school districts first. There are 6 school districts that said, we want to be a little bit different. We passed a law one of the first years I was there, and I even carried the bill because I thought it was a good idea. Let's get rid of some of the constrictions that we have, and let schools educate. And so there are 6 schools that applied to be innovative school districts, and they were approved. There's a process to get them there. You just can't say, pick me, and it's done. But we have KCK, which is an inner city and a large poverty population in inner city Kansas City, which is a very large school. Another very large school is Blue Valley, but it's the richest school in our district, in our state. And then we have a middle school, McPherson, which is a middle-sized school, but great education. They really always surpass all the recommendations. And then we have 3 smaller schools, Marysville, Concordia, and Hugoton. And so Hugoton would have transportation issues that our city schools wouldn't have. Marysville and Concordia would have some of that, but they'd also have rural populations. And so whatever we come up with, I would like to see it instituted over those 6 schools first, rather than try to put it over all 286 school districts and not know how it's going to work. That way they would work out the bugs. They'd tell us what works for large schools, what doesn't work for the small schools or the rural schools versus the city schools. I think that's the way to do it. However, we have to have this done by 2017. That block grant is only good for 2 years. And so I don't know if we have enough time to do that. What I see happening is that we extend the block grant, But then our rural schools, our smaller schools are really struggling that they're not getting the money that they need, especially in our rural counties who have lost oil and gas tax valuations. And so they're not getting the money even from the local economy that they would have gotten.
And that assumes the Supreme Court doesn't throw a whole thing into it as well to make that happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be an interesting session. We'll talk about this. I know when you initially ran for office and talked about some things you wanted to do. We'll come back and talk. It seems like the budget issue is a big cloud that hangs over everything.
Yes.
And we'll talk about some of those other things you'd like to see happen, because you are one of the hardest working legislators there. And when you travel around our part of the world. Our guest is Sue Boldra, state representative from our area. Back with more after this from Hayes Med.
It's a beautiful day in our super high-speed internet great customer service neighborhood. Like you, this is where we live. In fact, our company is employee-owned, so it's our goal to improve the quality of life for everyone in our community by delivering faster, more reliable internet, clearer, more feature-laden phone service, quality TV channels, all with the level of customer service you'd expect from people who are your neighbors. Eagle Communications, our community connected.
Welcome back to the second half of our forum program here on Eagle Community Television. Our program is brought to you by Hayes Med. If you have any ideas, questions, solutions for some of our problems, both Sue and I would like to hear those. You can send them to me at gary.shorman@eaglecom.net. If you have ideas for future show, let me know that as well. You can find us on Facebook as well. Look under ECTV Forum. Sign us up, be our friend there. Again, our guest is State Representative Sue Boldra. And Sue, we spent the first part of our program talking about education because that's one of the things that you got into this job, knowing you, because you have an education background, that you know the importance of it. That's a big battle. Money's an issue there. What else is on your list of saying, hey, I'd like to see accomplished in the next term?
Well, I really think we need to look at the whole controversy behind Medicaid expansion, the CanCare expansion. We've talked to several people. I've heard both sides. I've read articles on both sides. I've seen what other states have done, and some of the states have backed out. We did have a meeting here in Hayes just last week, and the hospital associations were here, and John Jeter, our own from Hayes Med, asked for a reasoned conversation. Let's really talk about the issues. He would really like to see the state sit down and talk about the issues in a large forum rather than having those people who are so against it publish ideas, publish papers, and of course the hospital association is seeking those funds. We're going to have to do something. And it's a growing problem. The numbers are growing. I'm not sure where I sit right now because I've seen that there are states that are really having trouble with it. But if that's the way, and we're never sure if the federal government is going to hold up their end. I don't know how I'm going to feel about this, and I don't know how I'm going to vote, but I would like to see that reasoned discussion happen.
Well, and to some extent, therein lies some of the problem, is that there's not a lot of reasoned discussion across our state. And one of those, and you see that on just like in schools, some of the smaller hospitals are certainly at risk when the Medicaid expansion didn't happen, and as a result, there's a tier of people that have no coverage and they end up being part of the hospital program and without any sort of reimbursement for those. So is that something you're seeing when you're out in the area, the rural hospitals dealing with some of the funding issues?
Yes, and so many of the communities have said we have poured lots and lots of money into our hospitals, but there is a point where we're not going to be able to fund it anymore. We lost one down in Independence. On this ag tour that we stopped at in Washington County at the little town of Washington, and they have 2 small hospitals in their district. And one of the legislators said, we're hearing that if we would expand Medicaid in Kansas, that the bulk of the money would go to the big hospitals in Lawrence or Topeka or Wichita, and that the small rural hospitals wouldn't get very much. They'd only get about $200,000 apiece. Is $200,000 worth it to your hospital? And oh my, those hospital administrators said $200,000 would do incredible things in rural hospitals. It might not do much at KU Med, but it would do a whole lot for us. And so we're kind of seeing that the rural hospitals are kind of starting to speak up. Again, I would like to see a really open, reasoned discussion.
What else do you expect on the session? Funding, Medicare, Medicaid?
Yeah, and I don't know that
is that going to be it?
Well, we're still talking about water in ag. We're still talking about some of the federal overreach, so we'll see where that goes. But yeah, I think the budget. And of course we're going to have to convince legislators that they're going to have to work towards something instead of working away from something.
You mentioned that you're on the Ag Committee as well, and actually in a vice chair role there. What do you see on the Ag Committee happening?
Well, I see a pretty light docket. There will be issues. I think we're going to come back with probably something about animal health. We work pretty closely with K-State. They do a lot of, come to us and present a lot. I think that the federal government has kind of taken care of the prairie chicken problem and the waters of the U.S. problem for at least for now. They've kind of halted EPA there. So I think the ag budget, docket will be slight compared to what we're going to have to deal with the budget.
Well, we'll wrap this up because I know we'll get a chance to talk to you again after the first few weeks. And if the Supreme Court actually does issue a ruling, it's going to throw a whole interesting twist into your session this next year.
Well, and you know how I feel about that. I mean, I know that education at schools need money, and I know that we have to be fair, and we have to really work hard to get some sort of a formula that'll work for everyone. But again, as far as I'm concerned, I'm a government teacher. The courts have no power of the sword and no power of the purse. If they want to give us some sort of a target and give us some time, I could understand that. But to tell us we're going to have to spend $54 million is the number they're talking. We're already $159 short. I don't know where we come up with
dollars, sure, yeah.
I don't know where we come up with another $54 million if the court says we have to do it.
You know, you always have these little schools that just seem like it's a struggle to keep them open.
Absolutely.
You have some of the big schools in the big areas. I mean, that's an ongoing challenge. We're not going to end by a court decision of big versus
right.
small. You see that happen throughout our state with the rural communities, of which most of the communities that we serve at Eagle and in our part of the world are small rural communities,
That's right.
some bigger than others, but still in the rural part of it. And finding a formula that fits is what I know you're fighting for in the people you represent here in Northwest Kansas.
I continue to say that the biggest divide is not Democrats and Republicans, it's urban versus rural. And I see that in a lot of legislation that we pass.
Sue, keep up the good work and keep up the effort, because I know you're all over our part of the state right now doing things, and then the real work starts in the next session at the first of the year.
Yeah, it does. Wish us luck. Pray for us.
Everybody out there. Hey, Sue Boldra has been our guest here on the Forum program on Eagle Community Television. She's our state representative. Thanks for watching the program. It's brought to you by HaysMed and by Eagle Communication, our community connected.
HaysMed is your first and best choice for healthcare. They're the only facility providing tertiary level services in this region. With more than 70 physicians and 26 specialties ranging from heart, orthopedic, spine care, cancer, obstetrics and gynecology, wound care, rehabilitation and surgery, including the Da Vinci robotic surgery, HaysMed is your comprehensive health provider for people throughout Western Kansas. HaysMed, helping people be healthy.